To call this Finance Committee meeting to order. The first item we have is assignment for request for council action. We have several for the Finance Committee. 24-101, Medina Municipal Court Renovation Design Submittal Review. 24-102, RETA Compliance Program. 24-103, Vacation Policy for Experienced New Hires. 24-104, Amend Salaries and Benefits Code Sick Time Payout. 24-105, Ohio Law Enforcement Body Armor Program. 24-106, Fiscal Year 24 CHIP Grant Application Authorization. 24-107, Fiscal Year 24 CHIP Partnership Agreement. 24-108, ECID Adopt Levying Special Assessments for Legacy Hotel. 24-109, Maintenance Agreement with Medina County. 24-110, Amend 3102B1, 3105, and 3107 for the Parks Department. And 24-111, Municipal Court Pay Code Updates. We have a lengthy agenda this evening, and hopefully we'll be able to get through everything prior to recessing out, I guess, if we have to council and maybe reconvene after. But let's see how it goes, but there's a lot of items to discuss. The first item to discuss is the 24-101 Medina Municipal Court Renovation Design Submittal Review. And as we talked about before, once we have information together, council can look it over and ask the question to discuss. So Nancy here from Branstetter has a presentation for us to talk about where they are in the process and some questions for us if we have questions for them, to try to answer and try to move the project forward. So Nancy?
Great, thank you. Again, I'm Nancy Nozick from Branstetter Carroll Architects, the architect on the project for the Medina Municipal Court. Let's see, here we go. Design update. So just a brief overview of where we are. Actually, my last slide is the schedule, but I'll jump to talk about that. We were scheduled to deliver our design phase package on April 30th, which we did. Submitted that to Pat Patton at the city and the court. Then we followed that up that week with a meeting where we kind of did a page turn and kind of looked through the documents with the owner. The documents are currently with our cost estimating firm. So I know that's your first question. Where's our cost estimate? They're still working on that. So as soon as we get a cost update, we will share that with you. But today I just want to show you where we are in the design. So we have some drawings here. This is what we call an axonometric. It's a kind of a 3D cutaway view. So you can see a little bit more of how it would be in the building. This is if you were looking at the building, you sliced through it at the first floor. The orientation we are looking at is kind of east of the county courthouse building. So as you can see, north is kind of going off there to the right. The yellow box there is the future municipal courthouse, which is currently the 1969 building. At the top of the page would be Medina Square. So what we're trying to convey here, that orange area is the public entry. That's the current public entry into the county courthouse. So when the municipal court occupies the 69 building, which is that yellow block, public will come in through that shared main entry of the county courthouse, go through the security checkpoint, and then turn left and go through the connector corridor there into the municipal courthouse. We got a couple other lines here. So down at the opposite end of the building, there's a blue area that's highlighted with a red line and arrow. That is the persons who are in custody coming to court. They will arrive through the Sally Port. Oh, look at that. I probably have an arrow that I could use, but they will enter through the Sally Port, which is where all of the in custody people come for the county courthouse and the municipal courthouse. That kind of blue pathway, they will enter through to the hold rooms that are in the county courthouse, but we are creating a pathway, a corridor that we planned for initially with the county project to create a link over to the municipal courthouse, which is the yellow piece. So there's a little blue pathway that they're going to follow that gets them all the way back in secured areas to that little spot that looks green, which is a smaller hold area within the municipal courthouse. There is an opportunity if there are many people in custody or they're going to be there for a while, they can be held in the main hold rooms in the county facility, where we have separate men, women, and juvenile hold areas, but there are some hold spaces in the Muni Court as well. The municipal court had a meeting last week with the county sheriff's office to discuss security for the municipal courthouse. At that point in time, they decided that we were going to have a separate staff entrance to the municipal courthouse, that the sheriff's department said that would require another sheriff personnel at that location to monitor that entrance, even though it would only be for people who have key cards. So the decision was made that at the bottom where it says judges and magistrates entry, that is the staff entry to the county building. So the intention is that judges and magistrates would enter there, which is close to the parking garage, and work their way through. Then they will cross the public lobby to get into the municipal courthouse, at which point they can then go to the left and to the right and into the staff hallways so that they're no longer in with the public. So that is kind of a new development. So I'm going to go through quickly the 3 floors. What we're looking at here on the right-hand side is a floor plan with north up, which means the square is to the left of the plan. And then the 3D view is the same orientation we were just looking at from the kind of the east. So that orange area there is the connector, the public connector that the public will come through into that orange kind of public lobby. And there's an orange public elevator that they will use going up and down. On this floor, the light blue hallway to the hold areas, that's that in-custody pathway that I mentioned on the previous slide, so that in custody come and go to that hold area without crossing the public area or a staff area. The top of the page in the 3D is the law library, which is where it currently is located right now. The conference room that is in the law library will stay intact. We are going to reconfigure the office area because we are encroaching in the law library slightly for the in-custody elevator and a new public restroom that are there. But the rest of that law library will remain intact. The blue area to the left are the municipal clerk files that will be down in that area. Those are kind of the main key things. The things that we've been developing as we've gone through the design documents is coordinating the electrical, the mechanical, the technology, making sure that our bathrooms stack and our electric rooms stack, and that everything is we have the right pathways within the building for all of those things to happen. When we go up to the second floor, same orientation again, floor plan on the right-hand side of the page. The square is to the left of that plan, and then the 3D axon view in the same orientation. Again, the orange areas are the public hallways and the public restrooms. When you come up the public elevator, right there, you will come out and turn left and go down the hall to the blue municipal clerk area. We have a little widening of the hallway there, and we have windows, for transaction windows there to do business with the municipal clerk. At the end of that hallway are public restrooms. Then in the center of the building, right next to where the public elevator is in green, is the hearing room. So this floor has one hearing room on it that is accessed from the public hallway. Behind that, the areas in purple are court staff. So we have magistrates' offices, bailiffs' offices, things like that that are necessary on this floor. The magistrates enter the hearing room from that side, which is the staff side, and the public enters from the other side. At the other end, the pink end of the building, is the municipal probation office. So again, the public hallway goes down to that area. So the public enter through the public hallway to the probation office area. There's a waiting room there, conference room, and then the individual offices. The staff who work in both probation and the court staff, there are staff hallways, a separate staff restroom, and elevator that they will utilize to move up and down within the building. Then finally, up on the third floor, again, the orange is the public hallway. The green areas in the center, we have 2 courtrooms. The main courtroom is the larger courtroom that has a jury box. The secondary courtroom is an additional courtroom that can be used for hearings or whatever other proceedings need to happen. If there's a visiting judge that comes, things like that, that will happen in that courtroom. Again, public restrooms are at the same end of the building, so everyone knows where to go for the public restrooms. In this case, the purple in the opposite corner is that's pink. Go up to the purple. There you go. I like it. I like it. That is court staff. So the judge's office, the court administrator, all of those kind of functions happen there. And then the pink on this floor is the city prosecutor. So we do have offices here for the city prosecutor. Again, access off of the public hallway. There is a door in the hallway between the prosecutor and the court staff. The intention is that is a secured door. There is no intention for there to be free access between those 2 spaces, but there is a secure door there that lets for egress out of the building when it is necessary. So the exterior of the building, we have been working with a company called Fenestrom, who's located, they have a showroom here in Medina, and they do windows and doors. And so they've been looking, the kind of upper right is the front main entry doors. They will not be used as entry doors any longer, but we want to maintain the exact same appearance, but we want them to be no gaps at the bottom, no weather, just a solid panel that looks like the doors and the side lights, but acts as a wall. So they've been out looking at that and are working on, have given us actually a proposal for that kind of configuration. We're also working with them to replace the windows, so we will have a better thermal performance on the windows. The columns themselves need to be replaced, and then just repair work on the front of the building. We are aware that we will be coming in front of the City Historic Preservation Board to review the windows and the doors, anything else that we're doing on the exterior of the building. Building systems, so I wanted to highlight one big thing we've been talking about in the building, the boilers. We haven't made a final decision on this yet. The boilers that are in the 1969 building are not too old. They're in good condition. However, they are becoming obsolete and the manufacturer is no longer making them, which means in the future it will be more difficult to get replacement parts and to do maintenance on them. So we are looking at an option to actually replace those boilers with something that would be more efficient. They would be a little smaller than what you have now and would serve for a much longer period of time. The county has asked if we do this, that they come in and they take those boilers out because they can use them somewhere else. They'll use them somewhere else. So if we decide to replace the boilers, the county will take those boilers and put them to good use. If we replace them, we anticipate it's about $50,000 additional to the construction cost as if we did not replace them. But again, we're trying to give recommendations for the long term, and we'd hate to have you all move into this building and then have issues with the maintenance of those boilers. The county did bring out a local heating company that does work for them. They looked at the boilers and they offered another suggestion that would be a kind of tankless boilers that are kind of instantaneous. And again, these boilers are providing hot water to the mechanical system for heating within the building. We're not going to have radiators anymore, but these boilers do provide hot water to provide the heat in the air handlers. Our only concern with the option floated for the instantaneous heaters is they're more of a residential application, and we do not typically use them for institutional facilities. But we're looking into that as well. So we have been discussing this with the city and the county and the building commissioner here and the mayor. So everyone's concerned about this and interested in this. And again, no decision has been made at this time. A couple more things I want to talk about. I'm trying to be fast, Mr. Coyne. Transaction windows is another thing we've been talking about. How we develop the transaction windows, particularly at the clerk's offices. Are they ballistic rated or not? What I'm showing there, and I apologize to the court staff over there, they haven't seen this yet. This is a different look at, on the left-hand side, this was a police station, therefore the blue, where we had ballistic glass, and instead of having a little speak hole, which at the county courthouse, they're having some issues with the speak hole. They can't hear very well. It's in one location in the window, so if you're too short or too tall, it's kind of hard to speak into them. In this case, if you see the plan, I've kind of highlighted in blue, there's kind of 2 layers of ballistic glass that are offset. So, and they run the whole vertical way. So there is a gap, a very small gap the whole way up. So if you're a short person or a tall person, you can still speak clearly through that. In that case, there'd be ballistic glass up top, and the wall below would have a ballistic panel as well. In this case, if you can see in the picture of the guy standing there at the window, just behind his legs is kind of a rectangular box. That's a pass-through if you have to send something through that is larger than a couple slips of paper. In our current drawings for the Muni Court, we have little trays that are secure slide trays that are in between the transaction windows. So if you have something that is a file folder or something that is thicker, it can pass through the window. On the right-hand side is a picture of what's over at the Muni Court right now. It's hard to tell. They have glass that's not ballistic glass. There is a gap at the bottom, about a 3 to 4 inch gap at the bottom, where they can easily pass things through. Then they have a little speaker module that has a microphone. So that's another option, is do kind of electronic speaker for the microphone. In either case, what we do with the transaction windows, we will have a ballistic panel underneath. So if we do not have ballistic glass up above, if there's an issue, they can duck down under the counter and be in a secured space. We've been talking about the fact this is a secure building. You're not going to get into this space without going through the security checkpoint and the x-ray machines. However, we always like to err on the side of caution and have these options. The Ohio Supreme Court has not published a position on this, whether you should have ballistic glass at the transaction windows. Again, they provide kind of guidelines, and they did actually do a thorough review of our initial plans, our concept plans. They did not address this particular issue there. So this is something that we can decide between the city and the courts. Again, nothing has been decided, but this is something that we are working on. Then I wanted to share just some pretty pictures of the main courtroom. It is our intention to salvage as much of the wood paneling as possible in the 2 existing courtrooms in the 1969 building and other wood trim throughout the building and reuse it. There's some fantastic wood and trim that we could not afford to put in today if we started from new. So, so what you're seeing here kind of represents salvaging some of that wood. We would salvage it, we would refinish it, and repurpose it in creating the paneling on the back wall, the trim around the windows and doors, the judge's bench, the wall in front of the jury box, and the wall at the gallery. So these are just some images of that courtroom that we're working on currently. I'm going to go back a second here. You can see the ceiling. That is the existing ceiling in the one courtroom right now. So even though our courtrooms don't exactly align with the current courtrooms, in this main courtroom, we can salvage 2 or 3 of those ceiling bays that make the space feel really nice. And it already has some indirect lighting in that, so we are trying to salvage that. I do have, let's see, can I do this, or Jared, do you need to do it? The video, how do I make it play? Oh, there we go, look at that. I am not technologically savvy. So this just kind of shows you around the courtroom. You get a little more dynamic view of how the courtroom is laid out and the spaces at the judge's bench on either side. Judge Werner, that's the closest person we found to you. You have to grow a beard. You have to grow a beard, yeah. So we just wanted to share this. We've done a couple different schemes of this and have shared them with the court. It's just a good way to convey the design intent. And then finally, our schedule. This is the schedule we shared with you when we were here a couple months ago. The red circle over there is today, part of our owner review at the end of the design phase. We are on schedule, and currently our construction document phase goes through October. So we are in the process of moving forward. The city also has a request for qualifications out for a construction manager at risk. As soon as they get on board, they will merge with us during the construction document phase and assist us. That's it.
Well, thank you. That was
Thank
a great presentation. We really appreciate that. I guess we had some questions. I think Patrick sent you some questions that initially were to be talked about, and maybe we'll address those first and then go around and ask questions of counsel and the judge and see if there's any other comments that anybody has with respect to the presentation. And I think some of the questions that we've always had through this process, even before you, with the other, the former judge, is just dealing with some of the logistical things and maybe some of the questions. One of the first ones that always come and we always talked about is, you mentioned the ballistic glass and that, and I guess there's always a little confusion because it's a secure place. And I know you err on the side of caution, but you also have a lot of bailiffs, both on the county side and in the municipal side, that have guns too. And I don't know if we're concerned that the guns may be taken away from them. I hope not. I don't think that's, I hope they're trained not to have that happen. But do we know the cost of this? I mean, because we talked about it before, and it was quite costly to go with a ballistic wall and ballistic glass, and is it necessary? So I guess some of the questions is, can you talk about that, or do we put it as an ad alternate to try to see what the cost is, or, you know, I don't know the
Yeah,
answer to this
I
question.
would say before we do it an ad alternate, you know, we still have lots of opportunities for cost estimating before we get to that point. So we will evaluate that. I will tell you what we ended up doing at the county courthouse. What they decided, they do not have ballistic glass, but they do have ballistic panels underneath the counters. And again, the judge's bench has a ballistic panel as well. So just in case there's that, but they opted to not do the ballistic glass in their transaction windows. So it is certainly feasible to do it that way. And again, we're trying not to make any assumptions on that. We're putting out the options, and we want to make sure that we evaluate it thoroughly and make a good decision. Everybody makes a good decision.
1 second, and I noticed that you only had 5 windows there instead of the 9 that I remember the last one, there was like 9 windows, and I was wondering where we were going with that, but that's a great improvement. But Judge?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it. These are all design ideas at this point. Once they put costs on these, then we can make trade-offs. We prioritize which things matter most to us within the scope of the budget. So we're going to have to see this all, costed out before we can make smart choices between things like ballistic glass, et cetera. But we want to know what it costs. We're doing the same thing with the tech side too. How expensive are these certain systems, and where will that fit into the overall budget once we start making the trade-offs that the budget will help us make? So.
Yeah, and on the tech side, I don't know, on your side, you have your own computer people, but things are changing so fast. And I don't know how you plan ahead for that, like with AI coming and all that, because that'll change the look of things for sure, and the interaction with the computers, both by the jury, I would imagine, and you, the judge, and all the people that work for the court.
Between our IT staff, your IT staff, and the folks that they're bringing along, they've got a lot of people smarter than the two of us, John, looking at this question, because you're absolutely right. This stuff has to be durable and expandable and adaptable for years to come. So we're getting some excellent advice in that regard too.
That's great. The second question, I know you already touched on a little bit, was the boilers and that, and I guess we're just trying to figure out, when you say the cost, I just didn't understand, and I was asking Pat the question, is the cost just the 50,000, the cost for the removal of the boilers, the purchase of the new boilers, the installation of new boilers, the tearing down of the areas that may, you know, you don't need a big of an area of a chaseway, you need a smaller chaseway, is that all inclusive, it's only 50,000?
That's about what we're thinking right now. We don't
Okay.
have that's the range, yeah.
Because that, I mean,
50, yeah, it's not that much.
that'd be great if it
right.
is, but I mean, it
Yeah.
just seems kind of hard to believe, but, you know, I don't know what the cost of
Right.
boilers are now. And like you said, the on-demand systems, you're right, I've never seen many of them in commercial settings, but, I mean, they work great if they work, but again, you have no idea
Right.
if they're gonna work in that situation.
Just to be clear, John, I thought, Nancy, it was 50,000 more for new boilers.
Yeah.
The total cost would be more than that, but it's offset by what it would cost to maintain the existing ones.
Yeah, I think the 50,000 is the current thought on the impact to the budget, the construction cost right now.
Okay, yeah, well, I guess we.
And
we
it's,
just-
it's a order of magnitude, you
Right,
know.
Right. We'll have to see what happens with
Mm-hmm.
respect to that. The other thing is that we just wanted to reaffirm, because we've always had this concern, I mean, this has been 20 years ago, the way the second courtroom's set up, we've always had the concern, because we know as a city on this side of the aisle, that if you prepare a second courtroom, and I think Mr. Huber's researched this, that, you know, the judge has the authority, once you have the ability to have a second judge, to make the sole determination if a judge is going to be in that courtroom or not. The city and council have no say whatsoever in that. So we just want to make sure that we didn't do something to provide an opportunity for that to happen, because we, as a city and council, don't think we're there yet. And, you know, we have a judge now, we had a judge before, there'll be a different judge maybe later. We just want to make sure that we still have control over that. And I assume that the way this courtroom is set up is not conducive to permit under the Ohio Revised Code for the judge to allow, to say that he wants a second judge.
It would not, nothing that we do in the building is going to trigger that you need to have a second judge. I'm not an attorney, so pardon me, but in our experience, what drives that is caseload and population that you're serving.
No, I totally
So-
agree with that.
So it's just by building that room does not mean all of a sudden you have to have another judge. So what it does is it gives you the flexibility in how you operate the court and all of the things that are coming through the court. And that's,
So I guess we have to direct it to Mr. Huber. So Mr. Huber, is this design, does this give the authority to the current judge to authorize or mandate another judge to be located there, notwithstanding all these other factors? But if he just woke up one day and said, you know, I'm going to have a second judge there, does he have the ability to do that?
Well, first of all, if you're building this for the next 50 to 100 years, it's got to be built to have a second courtroom, so I don't know why that question's really all that relevant, John. Second of all, it kind of points to our judge and highlights some kind of suspicion that he's going to do something that's going to undermine the council, and I don't think that that's going to happen.
Would you say
And
that's
I've
something
never
with Judge
seen it
Shea?
happen where there isn't a discussion. I've seen this, the most difficult conversations occurred up in Stowe when they built the court there, and even with that situation with a judge who was pretty high-handed, it still required a whole lot of conversation before it could happen. So I don't think it's just a matter of waving a wand without communication. I would anticipate there's going to be communication, but I would anticipate that that would happen when there's some reasonable need.
We appreciate your comments on that. However, we've been through this for many years, and even with Judge Chase, this was a big sticking point with council, because he knew his authority, and all we had to do was provide him space, and he could get a judge, he said. He said he didn't have to talk to anybody, didn't matter why, when, how, where. And not to say any particular judge we're targeting, or doing the concept, right? Because we've calculated it's about another $500,000 hit to the budget if there's another judge that goes in there. So how do we handle that?
Well, you're kind of mischaracterizing what I said before about this issue. The judge can declare that he needs another judge, but the whole question ultimately has to go down to the Ohio Supreme Court, and they have to approve it. So there's a whole line of things. It's not, I never said or told you or recommended or said that a judge could simply say we need a judge and it happens. it's got to get approved through the Supreme Court, and there's a process that requires, which is going to involve communication.
No, I didn't want to mischaracterize what you said, but you're true. You're correct in your statement, but the main thing they look at is if you have space available for another judge, and if you provide it, well, it's a big factor, I think, and we talked about it, if I remember correctly, with Judge Chase, but you are correct, and this is kind of the concern of council had back then, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the people that were on back then probably still have the same concern, so. Yes, Judge.
Okay. To allay some of the suspicions, first of all, we've got 3 judicial officials in that building now. I mean, the purpose of that third courtroom is to allow our magistrates to run procedures while I'm running something in courtroom 1. Because that tiny little room over there, they have to split the time that they use that. So that affects the way we handle the schedule. If we get a third room, then both magistrates can be conducting procedures at the same time. And, you know, at some level, we're going to have to trust each other that we're not going to lose our minds with, you know, power and authority just because there's another courtroom in the building. You know, it's going to turn on need. It really has to be included. That's the point of building something like this, is to anticipate when you are all gone and we are all gone, there will be others here making decisions that we can't even anticipate sitting here. So we're providing them with the flexibility to make choices down the road when we're all gone and things have changed.
That's correct.
But in the meantime, as I say, we've already got 3 judicial officials over there. That third room's going to help us administer our docket. So that much I can say.
Yeah, we hope it does. Yeah, I mean, that wasn't my point I was making, and I think members of council that were on before understand these lengthy discussions and the memorandums that were written about this about 10, 15 years ago when we really talked about it, so. I mean, I don't know if anybody has anything to add to that from back then, or
Mayor's got it.
not. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just want to share with the council, because the judge and I have had a number of conversations offline, but the other advantage that this provides is, right now, the case numbers are going down versus going up, at least down from where they were at their highest. One advantage of this is to bring in a visiting judge without all of the other associated costs to hit those peaks periodically. The second advantage it provides is that if there's a conflict of interest today and that courtroom isn't there, then if the judge has to bring in a visiting judge to handle that, he can't use his own courtroom because there's nowhere else to go. So we could have the visiting judge hearing the case with the conflict or the rising cases to help get it back into the timelines required by the state of Ohio, as well as have the judge operate his, as well as have room for the magistrate. And I really think that the planning and organization of that is what we're trying to achieve for the court to run as effectively and as efficiently within the dollars that we can afford. I understand, Mr. Coyne, your concern of not wanting to give away that discretion or control that the council possesses. I think the real question is, does a hearing room without a jury box check that off for the Supreme Court? I simply don't know the answer to that.
Right. No, that's correct. You hit that on the head. That was correct. Another issue, or a couple other issues we just talked about, does anybody have any questions on that? Does anybody have any concerns about that? Paul?
Not about this specific issue, the courtroom?
Well, anything that we talked about so far. You
Oh,
guys have
well,
something
the
new?
only question I have is, the county was real quick to say they would take the boilers. Did they say anything about giving us some money since we're paying for it?
We haven't gotten that far.
Okay, please make that part of the discussion.
All right, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. The other question I have is, and I don't know if you touched on it enough, from a utility standpoint and a mechanical standpoint, is there anything else that needs to be done external to the courthouse to enable us to meet our needs internally of the courthouse? From a power
Don't
perspective,
know if I get that question. Everything else in the building
right?
is going to be brand new. So the power to the Muni Court was established during the county courthouse project, so that's all set and in place. The main technological or technology cable is already over there because we had to connect. We're going to have to pull it back a little bit above the ceiling, and then we're going to reconnect it. So those two pathways are already in place. We do need to bring a new fire line to the building for the fire suppression. We need a separate water line, and that needs to come off of Liberty Street because the line in Public Square is not large enough, so we're looking through all of that. So there's some infrastructure that's there, ready to go, but within the building itself, we're essentially replacing everything.
Well, I didn't know if there was any other, like, larger lines needed for sanitary sewer or something, because you have the, you know, the new court and this court. What was there existingly? Is everything fine?
Yeah, all of those, so again, the fire line is the only thing that we have identified so far that is needed, that isn't there today. But again, if you think about it, there's not, while we're reconfiguring the whole space, there have been many restrooms in there have been courts in there have been people in there, so, you know, the functional use of the number of people in there and the number of plumbing fixtures isn't that much different than
Sure.
what's there today.
And I think from your report, I think which is a great, you know, a great thing for the city is the ability to readapt and reuse the existing woodwork or the tile in the hallways. There's things that are very expensive over there you can't
Right.
replace, as you mentioned, that we're able to reuse, which I think will be a big help and provide a, you know, a statelier, you know, atmosphere from the existing facilities that are over there. I think that's great. I know there was a big furniture sale, and we're not involved in that, but I think that everything else that's involved with the court and the reuse and the readaptive use of those items is gonna be great
Yeah.
for
And
the court.
the court staff did have first dibs on the furniture that was in there, so Cindy went over there and tagged stuff that was set aside for them to reuse. So
Okay.
they are making use of some of
And
the
that the
furniture.
city has that in storage now,
Right.
that, the furniture that the court wanted. And so the county was very gracious with us, because originally they were gonna offer it to the county departments, us second, and then put it up for auction. And the judge reached out to Chris Jacob, and he switched those first two and let the Muni Court have first choice. And then we secured whatever it is that they needed.
And as far as the clerk of court storage area, you know, I mean, I guess, you know, I know it's over at the current court facility underneath with the rolling files and all that. And I know things are changing with respect to the maintenance of electronic files as opposed to paper files, and things are changing. What is the space difference over there? I mean, as far as the storage space is concerned, I assume that's not only for municipal court storage, but for any other secure file storage, I guess you would say?
Yeah, the space that's over there is more than what is currently across the street at the Muni Court. We have measured the movable, the high-density files, they're the ones kind of rolled together, and they will fit over there in the space that we've allocated. So all of the shelving that's there now will fit over there, and then there's additional space. There's going to be some workstations down in there. So it'll be up to the court what other kind of
Well, I was just asking,
storage
because
they
Mr.
want.
Huber always needs space for his secure files, and I know there's trouble getting
He's got to
them back.
barter
I
with
don't-
the court for that.
And if there's extra room, I mean, I would think you would love to have the space so you could just go get the files instead of having to get them shipped to them, but we'll have to see if there's enough space for that. Does anybody on council have any questions or comments, or?
Very nice, Nancy, thank
Everybody
you.
good?
Thank you.
Thank you
Judge,
for
you have
inviting
anything
me.
further to add?
Just on that last point, we have, like our summer intern is back out of school, back down the basement, continuing our digitization process too. So we've got all those Supreme Court superintendent's rules, which permit us to discard some records to make digitized copies of others, et cetera. And we're slowly working through all that too. That'll be an ongoing project for years, but that may also free up space in the new storage area over time as well.
Correct. No, I just hope that Mr. Huber will have to digitize and maybe get an iPad and work off of that for his.
You can pry
We're
that
we're just
flip
trying to
phone
work
from
work his way
cold
into the
dead hand.
technology age so that he could be there. Baby steps, I get it, but we're getting there. We're trying to get him there. Any other questions for either Nancy or the judge, or anything about the courthouse facility? Anybody?
I would like
Pat?
to ask a question, John.
Yes, sir.
I noticed on June 21st, the hazardous materials abatement is supposed to start. That's the asbestos removal. And of course, the 69 courthouse is still open to the public. The law library is a public facility. I wanted to understand what was going to happen exposure of the public to that asbestos that's going to have to be taken out of it.
All right, so first, the first thing is that time frame in there was our initial estimate of when that could happen. Once the city gets construction manager at risk on board, we're going to work with them to figure out what's the best timing for that. So most likely at this point, June 21st is rapidly approaching. I don't think it's going to start right then. And we have reached out to the county, and the county is working on a plan for what's going to happen with the law library, both during abatement and construction. So they're working on that, and they will be reaching out to you to discuss that.
Because I would imagine all the rules and regulations from the Environmental Protection Agency and abatement process have to be followed, so.
Yes.
Yes, so we don't have any really control over that, what they do with the law library, the county. So I would imagine you're correct, they would be in contact with the law library to make sure that whatever timing, there's advance notice, and whatever days that are necessary for the abatement to occur, that it's vacated at that particular windows of whenever they're doing it. I would imagine it'd have to be visqueened off, so to speak, and everything that would have to be followed, negative airflow and all the other stuff, whatever they
And
do.
remind me again, when is the construction manager at risk supposed to be appointed?
Well, the RFQ just went out last Friday. So Patton, you want to address that?
Correct, yeah, we are currently out to legal advertising for the CMAR. We're scheduled to submit our recommendation to council the last meeting before their summer break. So the first meeting in July was when we're scheduled to submit our recommendation, and assuming they accept it, we will enter into a contract at that point.
So-
Mid-July?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
yes, yes.
So obviously, that time frame for abatement is going to shift.
Yeah.
Because we need to get them on board first before we.
So Nancy,
Sure.
I'm correct in my understanding, though, that fundamentally, people are going to be removed from the building when asbestos abatement occurs. Is that correct?
That's what we have recommended to the county, so that, yeah, so no one is,
So a
Exposed
period
to
of
that.
time, the place is going to be emptied out,
Mhm.
abatement occurs, and then moved back in after it's done.
well, we've got it, we're going to work with our construction manager of what happens during construction.
But that's the
So-
overall idea.
Yes.
There is no current plan to relocate the law.
Microphone.
That's okay, Dave. There's no current plan.
Patrick, you had some other things to add?
I did want to point out a big issue, and maybe Nancy can speak about it, is the backup generator. I think we're looking into whether there's capacity on the generator that the county installed with their building, if that could serve the needs of our court. If not, we're going to need to have a backup generator. And the biggest question is where to put that backup generator.
So currently, our engineers, and the engineers we're working with for the Muni Court are the same ones that did the work on the county court. So they're going back and evaluating the size of the generator that was put at the county courthouse and the capacity that it is using right now, and evaluating the capacity that we would like to put on a generator from the Muni Court. We just had a meeting last Friday with them. We went through all of this. So when they get those numbers, they'll come to us and say, yeah, we have the capacity, or no, we don't, and we need to find a place for some generator.
And Nancy, could you speak, the boiler issue, obviously, I think we're waiting for the estimate so we can make a better decision, but we need to resolve this fairly quickly so it impact your design document preparation.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to point that out. And the last thing, when we hired Branstetter, when we set up these meetings, there's an idea that they would present it to council, and council would basically, I don't want to say approve, but be in a position where they allow Branstetter to continue on. I'm kind of hearing that's where we're at, that
Well, again, I don't think council here has much concern of the detail of the operations of the court or whatever. I would think we're more concerned about the overall project budget and making sure that the, project is successful in that regard. As far as where the rooms are located and, what hallways, we're not experts at that. We don't know anything about that. We just know about numbers, and we just want to make sure, what we're getting involved with, we can afford it, and it works well for the public, that's all. Anybody else have any questions? Nancy, appreciate it. If
Thank
you could
you.
get the boiler information sooner the better, then we can make a determination on that, because I think that's, as Patrick said, that's really the only thing right now that needs to affect the drawings, so to speak.
Correct.
Any modification related to drawings, okay.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on then, we're moving on to 24102 RETA Compliance Program. Keith?
Thank you. I marked that this needs the emergency clause, but I think I made a mistake here because last year we just had Board of Control approve this, so I don't think it needs to actually go to council, let alone have the emergency clause. I think it can just be approved by Finance Committee and be done with it.
Okay.
Sounds good to
Anybody
me.
have any questions on that?
Move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 24103, a vacation policy for experienced new hires. And I think we can talk about this kind of in a global thing. There's not going to be any decision made tonight, I don't think. We have to determine how we want to address this, which kind of relates to 24104, sick town payout policy, because this is all kind of a benefits package we're talking about, not only for new hires, but it kind of impacts when people leave also, because there's an impact on payouts and stuff like that. But Keith?
And since we're talking about this globally, my staff wanted me to point out and reiterate our request that we not do payouts to employees who are here for less than a year. That's actually in the ordinance that's on tonight. And they wanted me to give you the numbers. Back in 2021, we only had 2 employees in each of those years who left within a year, so it was hardly even a factor. And I know that was one of the questions that you had asked, and I didn't really know off the top of my head. When 22, we had 9 employees leave within a year. In 23, we had 10, and in 2024, we've already had 7 so far, and 3 of those 7 have been involuntary terminations. So the way the policy is written, we're voting, that's in council tonight, we will be paying vacation payout to employees who've been here for less than a year. And I don't think the school does that, do they? No.
So I guess there's also a probation period, if I'm correct. Is it 90 days? Is that the department, is there a 90-day?
Well, but the way the policy is worded that we're voting on tonight, they're going to start accruing vacation on day 1.
Correct.
And if they're fired at the end of 3 months, whatever vacation they've accrued in those 3 months, they will get paid out for, because we had asked for that and we decided not to do it. I wanted to bring it up, but we don't want to spend a lot of time on it.
Well, let's just talk, because they'll have to modify the ordinance on council tonight. So the way the schools handle it, Jim, is that they, if you leave within the first year, you're not able to have a payout of any of your accrued benefits?
Correct.
So what does council think about that?
Sounds reasonable.
So, but they don't get paid any accrued benefits, okay. So I think we'll make a modification of that, Kathy, so on the ordinance tonight, just to be clear that even though you'll be accruing vacation as you work, if you leave within the first year, you just can't say, I'm taking that and I want to cash it out and take the money with me. So you'd have to be here a year in order to do that, which I think is kind of a policy that we've been using.
It's a non-issue now because under the existing policy, you don't get the hours until you've been here for a year. So if you leave within a year, you don't have any vacation to cash out because you haven't gotten it yet.
Okay, let's talk about
All
then
right,
the
let's move on to-
vacation of experienced new hires.
Okay.
Coming in and how that's, there's really no clear answer, and I don't know how other communities do it.
You had asked me, and Lorene got a lot of the other communities which we attached to this request. You'd asked me about doing something, so I wrote up this request. I don't really feel myself an advocate for this per se. The main thing that I want to advocate for as the finance department is, since we're the ones that have to track this, what we really don't want to have is have 200 employees who each have their own vacation schedules. So I wrote this up as there would be 3. People, the one that we have now, which is people come in, they start out earning 2 weeks, and then the second one is they start out earning 3, and the third one is they start out earning 4. So we limit it to a reasonable amount that we can keep track of. And then I think it was Councilman Rose had mentioned in the discussion last time that, well, maybe council could decide. I don't think that really works for a new hire because it just takes too long to get through council when you're trying to offer a job to somebody. So I wrote it up as Board of Control having the authority, and there's all kinds of different policies here. Like Strongsville, it's just the mayor. The mayor was on vacation when I wrote this, but I talked to him afterwards. I don't think he really wants that authority anyway. I think it's Board of Control. It's an existing body. There's already a meeting. There's already minutes, so that it's already documented. You're not having to add anything that you're already doing. Just Board of Control votes on it and says, okay, this person starts with 3 weeks instead of 2 or 4 weeks. But there's 3 options. It's one of those 3, and that's it. So we keep it reasonably simple, but still have the ability for a lateral transfer, that if we're bringing in somebody, and clearly there have been examples, the judge and the police chief and so on, and it could be my department, If I bring in a person who's already got experience at that job, that's a benefit to the city, because instead of bringing somebody in and training them how to do the job, I bring somebody in and they sit down and hit the ground running. That's true for any department, so it felt like council wanted to do that, so you wanted me to write it up, so here's how I wrote it up.
Well, I
What do you
think the
want me to
mayor and I
change?
spoke about it a little bit, and there's little differences, but Mayor?
So historically, for the council's benefit, because having been here 40 years, I've watched this transform. So we used to give credit for public service anywhere. It wasn't job-related, it wasn't anything. So you could be a lifeguard somewhere else in another city and come in to be a police officer and end up with the vacation credit for all that time somewhere else. So then we said, no, it's got to be City of Medina service. Well, then we had, there's usually a name attached with each of these changes. So we had a fire chief who was part-time, assistant fire chief, part-time with the city for over 20 years, was appointed full-time and walked in with 5 weeks vacation. So then they decided, the council decided, we're not going to count part-time service, only full-time service, and only full-time service with the city. So I just thought historically, it would be good for you all to know how we got from there to now. The problem is in today's, and Council President Coyne and I talked about this a little bit after Border Control. In today's environment of employees and the lack thereof, and trying to be competitive, there may need to be some adjustments made. The question is, do we want it so defined, or do we want it on a case-by-case basis? So if we hire, my opinion is, if we hire somebody into the police department to do police work, and we look at their police experience, job-related and relevant experience, then the Board of Control can take that into account. We do have the Board of Control every 2 weeks, but we can also have an emergency Board of Control if we're trying to make a job offer to somebody with 24-hour notice. So we can look at those things on a case-by-case basis if that's what the council determines. I just don't think it's appropriate for one individual to be making that decision. In this case, I'm in this seat, but regardless of who's in the seat, I think more eyes on it, more people reviewing it, having a proper record of it, in my opinion, for the public's benefit is important.
And I think we also talked about, I had a little concern about somebody who may have a great experience, may come in with 4 weeks vacation, and I said, well, if you're coming to a new city, you shouldn't take 4 weeks of vacation your first year. You probably have to be here. I think there probably should have been a limit to that. And I don't know what the school does, but I think that, if you come here, you may have the 4 weeks, but maybe you're only allowed to take 2 the first year, just like we talked about the payout if you leave. Because if you take 4 weeks off, we hired you because of your experience to operate the city, and it's going to take some time to learn how to do that. So going on vacation 1 month of the year may not be conducive to that. But Jim, what are your thoughts on that as far as what the schools do, as far as bringing somebody over, or do they even do that?
It's just hard to compare completely to the schools because the majority of our employees are 10-month employees. They have a summer off already. They're there when the kids are there. So we don't have a large percentage of 12-month employees. We do have some, but they have a very set plan, just like you have here, as far as, you're here 0 to 5 years, you get 2 weeks, and you work your way up. They do get credit, though, under their Ohio Revised Code. If they worked at another public entity, they bring that time with them, too, then. We've hired people from the city here who brought that time to the schools, and that's where they get their vacation, and that is Ohio Revised Code that we're following there.
Well, I guess a benefit or not benefit, Ohio Revised Code doesn't dictate what we can do, but I think the mayor has a good solution, is the Board of Control can look at it, because the department head will make the recommendation, I would imagine, based upon what they know about the jobs that they're looking over and are responsible for, to make the recommendation of how it would occur, which is totally fine. But I guess, what does the council feel about if you hire somebody that's entitled to 4 weeks vacation, should they get off 4 weeks the first year? I guess that may give a little disparity between some of the people who've worked here from the beginning that have to be here 15 years or 20 years to get 4 weeks, and somebody starts 1 year and they're brand new here and they get 4 weeks. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. President. In the private sector, to entice somebody to come hire, they do give the vacations right away. But I understand your concern. And what if we did something like, say, if you're hired first quarter, you get 4 weeks, second quarter, 3 weeks. You're entitled to 4, we hire you for 4 weeks. But depending on your start time, that's where how many you're allowed to take for that particular calendar year. So if you start in the fourth quarter, you get 1 week.
But also what we have to keep in mind, it is contingent on the department and when it's practical for somebody to take a vacation. Just because you want one doesn't necessarily mean that you can take it.
Yeah, I'm not saying we take any of that discretion from the department head. I'm just saying, this is how many weeks you're entitled to 4 because that's what we're hiring you for. But your start date would dictate how many weeks you get during the year to maybe allay some of your
You already
concern.
prorate it now, don't you?
Yeah, because we don't track it by calendar year. Each employee, their vacation year is when they started.
Right.
Oh, the vacation year
So-
versus fiscal year.
Because, right, when
Okay.
they hit the 5 years and they go from 2 weeks to 3, that's not January 1st. That's whatever day you started 5 years.
Okay.
So we're not, calendar year is kind of secondary to us. We're really looking at it on when your year is.
Were you looking at it at calendar year or
Yes,
vacation year?
I was
See,
looking at-
that's what I thought.
I was looking at it as a calendar
Yeah.
year that if you come in November, you got to wait till next November. You can't use all 4 weeks in that first year because the year, when you start, you still have to be here to understand how it
But you are saying what we do, because you didn't say till next January, you said till next November. And if you put in here a restriction that, okay, any new employee can only use 2 weeks in the first year, then it doesn't matter that they earn 3 or 4. They could only use 2 but we would enforce that as their first year.
Okay.
I feel like this is a non-issue because it's up to the department head whether they can allow them that amount of time. And I can't imagine anyone coming in and taking 2 weeks at a time, taking a huge chunk unless they had something planned that they let them know about prior to being employed. I mean, I can't imagine that a department head would grant 4 weeks of vacation if the person is not experienced enough in their job to be able to leave for a week. That would be part of it, like, hey, we can't, you haven't learned this yet, we don't have anybody to cover it, so we can't grant you the time right now. I mean, am I right or am I wrong? Someone tell me.
Well, and as a practical matter, they couldn't use
Yeah.
until the end of the year because you earn it as you go.
Go.
So you said somebody started in November. Okay, well, it's not like they could take December off because even if
Yeah.
they're earning 4 weeks a year, in that first month, they're not going to earn 4 weeks. I mean, they're going to have to get around to, they could take next November off.
And I have a question. Do you have like a seniority program? For example, everyone wants to take vacation during the holidays. Do you have it, how do you have that set up too? Because that could be
That's
a-
not handled through finance.
And that's up to
what
the
Jess
department.
was
To the
referring to, that
departments,
the
right.
department head.
Yeah.
So any department head is going to say, okay, we can't have all of the police, we can't have all of the garbage men, we can't have everybody go on vacation at once. And I think most departments do that by either sign up or seniority, but that's a departmental
I
decision,
just
not
feel like we're
finance.
micromanaging something that doesn't need to be micromanaged. Just the department heads can determine when that time is taken and distribute it or grants permission in a way that's not detrimental to their department or the person that is, just starting out and learning their job. Does that am I making any sense?
I thought though the question was, if they're coming in, if they're 45 years old, they've been doing the job for 22 years, right out of college, they have the experience, at their previous position, they had 4 weeks vacation. They've been taking 4 weeks vacation for the last 5 years because they hit their 4 weeks. We're going to bring them in and say, okay, well, you can't take any vacation for a year?
No, I don't think we're saying not take
Okay.
any vacation for a year. We're just saying, my
How
opinion would
much?
they shouldn't take 4 weeks for the first year because they're at a new position. But they're
Okay.
allowed to, they accrued that vacation, right?
Right.
So they have that, but the first year, they shouldn't be able to take it all the first year. And I think he's talking a little different. He's talking about
That much
when they
time
work
in
here, they
one
get more time and they accrue vacation faster, meaning more weeks, but they have to be here. Is that what you're indicating?
Well, that's how I wrote this up, that instead of accruing at a 2-week basis, you have an option that they could accrue at a 3-week basis or a 4-week basis. And so they would get to those times quicker because they'd be earning faster.
Will they be able to take vacation as they earn it?
The way the vacation works now, you can't take it until you've earned it.
Okay.
Right, so I mean, if you started, even if you were earning at 4 weeks, when you start, you can't take 4 weeks. You can't,
Yes.
And then after your first pay period, you're gonna have, what is that, almost 8 hours, so then you could take a day, and then after 2 pay periods, you could take almost 2 days, et cetera.
Well, I think the question is, I mean, this is bigger, and I thank the judge for bringing this up. It's probably something that we should have a little committee together with Keith, or maybe the mayor, or somebody in the department heads, a couple members of council, come up with a plan, because this is gonna be impactful, right? This not only affects us financially, but it's gonna affect our ability to bring people in. And I think that we probably should have something to solve that problem.
Bethany, you want to take vacation?
I agree with the committee. I think that'd be helpful, sort through some of the details. I do want to remind council, though, no matter how much experience they have, when they walk in the door, most of the full-time employees, it's a year probation. We don't want them off for 4 weeks of that 52 weeks,
Yeah, just
because we're trying to evaluate them.
Right.
So, the more time we can have them here to evaluate them during a probationary period, to me, just makes good sense.
Paul?
Thank you, Mr. President. A question, if we say, okay, you get 4 weeks, but you only get 2 weeks this year, what happens to the other 2 weeks? Do they go into a bank?
It
Can
would
can they build up vacation time?
It would depend how you worded that. I mean, what I said earlier was that they could only use 2, so they'd still earn 4, and yes, that would go into the bank. So at the
So
end of
then
the
we would
year-
have a 6-week problem the next year, next
Well,
vacation year.
But that's not unusual anyway, because all employees are allowed to roll up to twice what they're currently earning. So
Okay,
if,
so somebody could have up to 8 weeks.
right, if you're earning 4, you could carry 8. So if you say that a new employee is gonna earn 4, but they can only use 2, then at the end of the year, they're only gonna have 2, where there are other employees that are earning 4 that have 8. So that's really not a big deal, because we're already dealing with it on a much larger basis with employees that are here.
All right.
So why don't we just set up a little committee, and I just talked to Jim about it. It'd be probably prudent to have like somebody, the mayor, Keith, you, a representative from the court, maybe Cindy or somebody. Jim would like to be on it, and maybe one more member of council serves or not, whoever, you guys can fight it out.
Reggie's volunteering.
Reggie, you want to be on it?
Sure.
So why don't we do that? That's 5 people. You guys can come up with a recommendation, not only on this vacation, but if there's other things that we probably should look at to make us more competitive with other communities, so we get the best talent here at the city. I think we'd want to do that, but, we want to make sure it's done correctly, because it's going to be impactful for the future, so.
Mr. Coyne, I think it's a really good idea. And Keith, I think you solicited some information from other cities, and the overriding theme there was probably 75% of those cities in the last couple of years have relooked at this to be competitive because of the labor market. And I think that's very prudent on our part to do the same, so we're getting the best people here.
So why don't we do that, and in the next couple of meetings, we can have the answer, then we can make a modification to the policy. So that'll be with vacation, but I think there's an urgent question about sick time payout policy. And Keith, if you could just tell us what the current policy is, so everybody can understand what that is and how we
So
get it.
the policy was changed, and apparently when it was changed many years ago, we did not, and this was before I was here, I'd like to say, but we apparently didn't look and notice that we weren't actually allowed to make the change that we made. Greg looked this over, gave me an opinion. We are required under the ORC to pay 25% up to 30 days for any employee with at least 10 years with the city or any combination of city, state, and various political subdivisions of the state. We have an employee retiring who that applies to. Our policy only pays sick time out to an employee who's been with the city for 10 years. So we have to change that because we have to pay this. The question for council is, the ORC is a minimum standard. We can pay more than that. The ORC is 25% up to 30 days. The city's policy for people that have been with the city for at least 10 years, we pay 37.5%, so it's a higher percentage, and up to 400 hours, which is 50 days, so it's a higher percentage and a longer number of days. So the question is, you can either adopt only the ORC for an employee who's been with the city for less than 10 years, but's been with a combination of governmental entities for 10 years. Or you can just apply the existing city policy to employees who've been with any combination of governments for at least 10 years and pay the 37.5% up to the 400 hours. But you got to do one or the
Well,
other.
there's a reason we changed our policy or have our policy,
is.
so tell us the history on that one, because it's an interesting one.
So back before there was this limit, you might have somebody, I retired, when I retired to run for mayor in June of 2009, I had probably 2,400, 2,500 hours of sick time unused. We had somebody previous to that, when they changed this was already in place when I left, that had more than that, like 4,000 or 5,000 hours of sick time gathered up and could cash it all out. That's why the limit of 400 hours was established, so that the city does not take a huge hit like that. When you think about it, not only is it the sick time, but if they were getting 5 weeks vacation, kept the 10, because you can carry the year over, and then whatever they accrued, in my case, I left in June, so that was like 12 weeks, 12 and a half weeks of vacation, plus the 400 hours of sick time, and that's what fed my wife at home during the campaign season. But that was the reason that took place.
So I guess the question is, we have to determine how we'd like to handle that, and, I guess, Mayor, you're dealing with that issue. From the two options that Keith give us, that we have to follow their higher res code currently, and then, the modification to what we've done now. What is your feeling?
Well, my feeling is we have to follow the ORC if the council has an interest, because you determine compensation of whether we need to go to, or continue 37.5%, and up to 400, which is over and above what the state offers, then we can do that.
And it's for, Keith, you mentioned the Ohio Revised Code, you didn't have to wait to 10 years, it's automatic.
Under the Ohio Revised Code, you have to have 10 years, but you have to have 10 years with any combination of governments.
Any combination.
So if you work for the state,
yeah,
and
right
then
now
you
it's
work for
just-
Brunswick, and then
right
you
now
take
it's
years.
just us.
It's just us.
Yeah.
So what does everybody feel in council about the difference there? Keeping it at the higher percentage rather than a lower percentage set forth in the Ohio Revised Code? And, of course, we have to authorize 10 years at any jurisdiction, any governmental entity.
I would recommend keeping it the same as long as we're capping it at 400.
I'm in agreement with that. Let's not take a benefit away that
Yeah.
many of our employees have already planned on, if you will.
So the only change I'm hearing is that we will make it that it's 10 years of any government service, not
Right.
just City of Medina.
Correct.
Per the Ohio Revised Code, because we don't have a choice on that.
Right.
Well, I know, but we're going to keep it at 37%, which is the City of Medina policy, but our language now says it's got to be City of Medina 10 years. We're changing it to follow, similar to the Ohio Revised Code, that's 10 years of any government service.
And I will need an emergency clause on that because the retirement is going to happen before it would take effect otherwise.
So the only thing, Keith, if we keep it the same, we're just amending
Yeah, I think that's all you need. I agree.
the 10 years is any government as opposed to City of Medina.
Well, the question also is, when you say emergency clause, we're not doing it just for this one employee. Should it be made effective as of January 1st? How many people does that affect?
Well, it hasn't, we haven't had this come up. This is the first time it's come up lately.
Oh.
It may have come up
Not
years
this
ago,
year.
but
Not
not
this
this year. We haven't had anybody retired that.
Okay, just so going forward, I got you. I just didn't want to it's not, we're doing it because, well, first, we were incorrect, and we're correcting a problem. Yeah, we're correcting a problem that we haven't followed, but it seems like we could do that, and we'll probably pass it as, keep it the same, but have every Ohio Revised Code apply as far as any governmental use.
With the amendment.
Okay, is there a motion on that?
So I will make a motion that the City of Medina policy is amended to include, it's not 10 years of city service, but 10 years of any government, which follows the Ohio Revised Code, 37% with a cap of 50 hours, or I'm sorry, 400 hours, 50 days,
Second.
with the emergency clause.
Second, including the emergency clause.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries on that. Okay, now we're to 24105, Ohio Law Enforcement Body Armor Program. Who's handling this?
That'd be me, Mr. President, thank you. We applied to the Ohio Law Enforcement Body Armor Program for 5 vests and 5 carriers to go along to supply our couple new bailiffs and our new probation officer. The Ohio Law Enforcement Body Armor will pay 75% of it, and then we're only responsible for 25% of it. So we've been authorized for 2125 to get as a grant, and we're only responsible for 1,300 of it for 5 vests and 5 carriers.
Thank you. Questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 24106, fiscal year 24 CHIP grant application authorization. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. President. This is our every other year application for our CHIP grant, along with the City of Brunswick. This year, again, we'll be applying for $700,000 of funds for homeowner, low and moderate income homeowner repairs rehab. This year, we're looking at about $390,000 for private owner rehab for 6 housing structures, $210,000 for repair, approximately 10 structures. We also are going to utilize $16,000 for tenant-based rental assistance. That's typically through MMHA. Provides down payments and gaps in rent payments. Then the rest will be administration and fair housing, which is required for the program. The emergency clause has been requested as the application is due June 20th, and we have quite a bit of documents to get together prior to then. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
In the past, we received a kicker. If we combine the two, like with Brunswick and the city, is that?
Correct. I believe it's $300,000 if we do it alone, $350,000 our share if we combine it.
Oh, okay. This includes the kicker? Okay, thank you.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 24107, fiscal year 24 CHIP grant partnership agreement. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. President. As I noted, we partner with the City of Brunswick on the CHIP program. This is just the agreement between the City of Medina and City of Brunswick to apply with each other with the kicker. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move to approve with the emergency clause.
Second, including emergency clause?
Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. 24108, ESID request to adopt levying special assessments at Legacy Hotel. Kimberly?
Thank you, Mr. President. So just a little background, as a refresher for council, because I know we have a few new ones. The City of Medina formed the Energy Special Improvement District back in 2019 for businesses, companies, nonprofits, and government entities to use a development tool called PACE financing, and PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. PACE programs allow a property owner to finance the upfront cost of energy or other eligible improvements on a property and then pay the cost back over time through a voluntary assessment. The Legacy Hotel of Medina would like to use this tool as a part of their financing package. So this request for council is for a couple of items. One is to adopt an ordinance for the petition for special assessments for a special energy improvement project and a supplemental plan for the Medina County Energy Improvement District. That's per Chapter 1710 of the Ohio Revised Code. Would also authorize the mayor and the finance director to enter into any and all documents necessary in connection with the petition, supplemental plan, cooperative agreement, and special assessment agreement. Also to authorize and levy special assessments for the purposes of acquiring, constructing, and improving certain public improvements in the City of Medina in cooperation with the City of Medina Energy Special Improvement District, and to approve a cooperative agreement and a special assessment agreement in connection with this, such improvements and special assessments. So the energy efficient improvements for this project are for HVAC, windows, roofing, and lighting. So all the energy savings that they get as a result of those improvements can then be used to pay the assessment back. The ESID board held their meeting on April 23rd to approve the petition, And then I'm also adding that the ordinance is subject to final review and approval by the law director. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions on that easy stuff?
Did you just say that e-stuff?
I got a list.
I am on the e-stuff board, so I feel quite important. that
No,
I know
I
what
will
to
keep
talk
it
about.
short. What's the financial obligation of the city for this?
We do not have a financial obligation. This is the property owner volunteering to assess himself for the payback of the energy efficient improvements.
And they're borrowing the money through?
They're borrowing the money through the Development Finance Authority, which is the Port Authority for Summit County, who is going out to bond market to sell bonds, which infuses the capital for the project, and those funds are held at the U.S. Bank, which is the trustee bank, so all that money is held in the trust, and then those monies get distributed to the developer from that bank. So the cooperative agreement is between the City of Medina, the Development Finance Authority of Summit County, the Medina County Energy Special Improvement District, the Legacy Hotel, and
The auditor?
yes, I think it's the auditor,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
And then the special assessment is sort of a similar agreement, but includes the county treasurer.
Okay, because I see in here, and when I read this, that, like, there's an item here about default, that we would be in default if we didn't pay the money to the lending, I forget the exact word, but I'll just call it the lender. Okay, what if we don't get the money from them? Because I guess they funnel the money through us, if I read this right?
So the money gets paid back to the Medina County treasurer, then from the treasurer, it goes to the auditor. No, wait a minute, from the treasurer, it goes through the finance director, and finance director, then it goes back to the DFA. And Keith, I don't know, we kind of talked a little bit about this with your role in,
My understanding of this is we're simply a conduit
Yes.
because it's the city's power to levy a special assessment that's why the city's involved in this. PATH is issuing the bonds. They're not being issued by us.
that's
Right.
And so if the Port Authority issues the bonds, if the hotel doesn't work out, they stop paying their taxes, we're a conduit. So my understanding is, okay, we don't collect it, we don't pay it, and it's their problem because they're the ones that are issuing the bonds. It's not like the city of Medina is gonna have a bond that I'm not gonna pay. Because if it were our bonds, then yeah, we'd still have to pay them and we'd effectively be on the hook for this.
How much work do you anticipate this being for you and your office?
I anticipate this being minimal work, because there was some talk at some point that the county would just pay it straight to the Port Authority, in which case it'd be absolutely none. But even if they don't do that, it would simply be a matter of the county's gonna give us this check twice a year for this special assessment. Here's your check, and we're gonna write a check for that, we're gonna deposit it, write a check for that amount to the Port Authority. So there's not, I mean, it's not like we don't have any accounting for it or anything. We just get it from the county and give it to the Port Authority. We don't bill it, we don't.
I'm hoping that's that.
Yes, so we're
So I-
just a pass-through
Mr. Huber, you're
entity.
going to review this, right? Mr. Huber, you're going to review this?
Paul, what could possibly go wrong?
You want a list? Okay, I found things, and I'm not a lawyer. Okay, it says here on page 79, events of default and remedies, 7.1. The city shall, events of default, either of the following shall be an event of default. The city shall fail to pay and deliver to the trustee any assigned special assessments when due hereunder. Okay, that's what it says, so pay attention to that, please. Because if we don't get the money, we ain't paying.
But and that's a Greg question, but I would read assigned special assessment is the money you collect, not the assessment that you, that's how I would read it. So.
That's why I want Mr. Huber to read it. Okay.
Any other questions, Paul?
No, I'll hold off. We got a meeting in 10 minutes.
All right, I mean, I think this is going through outside counsel too, and it's with a DFA involved. I think they've done many of these. I think not only all over Northeast Ohio, if I remember correctly. This is not their first one. So I don't think there's any, we're not a guinea pig, so to speak, at all. But there's more and more communities doing this on behalf of local business people that want to take advantage of this program to help them pay for some improvements that they make to the properties that they're developing in their particular communities. So, you know, I think from our economic development committee meeting that it was kind of clear. They had a chart and they gave us all kind of information of how many communities have been doing this. So I think the risk is minimal, but that's up to Mr. Huber. But as far as it's being done, it's been done numerous times.
I'll make
Yeah,
a
this
motion
is-
subject to the final approval of the law director.
Second.
Anybody have any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 24109, maintenance agreement with Medina County. Pino?
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is a formal agreement between Medina County and the city of Medina. It speaks to the boundary roads where we end and the county begins. By practice, we've been doing this updated agreement in the field for years. It hasn't been updated since 1996. So Mr. Huber looked at it and worked with the folks over at the county and has approved this updated maintenance agreement.
Okay, any questions?
Move to approve?
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 24110, amend 3102B1, 3105, 3107 for the Parks Department. Jansen?
Thank you, Mr. President. We've had a position, our turf technician in the Parks Department, that's been vacant off and on the last several years. We've advertised for it in the past and have yet to find an individual with the required license as part of the position. And the last person we hired internally was part-time. We trained them, they took the test, passed it, and then left. So it's an important position. They use the USDA applicator's license to apply products to our athletic fields, the square, and all around the city. So we're looking to correct that. Our Parks maintenance tech, which is second in charge right underneath our foreman, took courses and received his license and certification. So I'd like to abolish the turf technician position, increase our part-time union laborers from 5 back to 6, so that we can get some more assistance in the department. The additional request is to change the maintenance tech pay from 32 to a 34, which is in line with our cemetery sexton and our tree care technician. It'll offer us a little bit more stability in the Parks Department, as well as reward an employee that does an awful lot for our department. The Civil Service Commission reviewed the job description changes, as well as Mr. Huber, and the job description is attached that incorporates the two jobs together.
So you're going, just from the tech perspective, for clarification, it's going from 34F to a 36A? Or what-
No,
what's
it's
it?
going from a 32
Oh,
to a 34.
32 what?
E.
E?
Because that's the next closest pay step. Then at the end of the year, it'll then go up to an F because that person has been with us for a while now. So the immediate cost of the budget for half of this year is about $400, and then the budget will be affected by about $4,500 moving forward. But we'll have an additional person to be permanent part-time labor helping us. So we have the money in carry forward funds, and I think it's a good decision moving forward.
That's music to our ears up here, I think. That's great. Any questions on that?
No.
Move to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We only have 5 minutes left, so I don't think we have time to discuss the room tax for hotel discussion, because I'm sure that's going to be a lengthy discussion. And also table the municipal court pay code upgrades, because I think there's more discussion that the judge would like to have with Keith and other members of his group to have on that. So, and I don't think we have enough time for executive session discussions. That's going to be after council. So if nobody objects with those things, I think we can adjourn finance now, have 5 minutes to regroup, and then council will commence. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, that finance meeting is adjourned.